so much to the sponsors that make these conversations possible: People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better at Landmark. Today, we're speaking with Judge Granke, Associate Circuit Judge. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming in today. Doug Granke is running candidate. He's a candidate for the Circuit Judge for the 4th Judicial Court. We're going to learn about him today and all about this position itself. It's going to be an interesting one. So first off, we're going to learn a little bit about you. Tell us about some of the experiences you've had in this position.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here, first of all. So in this position, I've been in this position for about 3 years. Before that, I was in private practice for a little over 18 years. Had the unique story and situation of actually practicing in the same law firm my entire career. So I took a clerk position in that law firm while I was in law school, went all the way through that, became an associate attorney there, and worked my way up to junior partner, senior partner, ultimately owner of the law firm. And then once I left there, I was elected as Clinton County State's Attorney, served there for a little while before I was appointed to this position that I'm currently serving in.
Amazing. That's a great resume you have right there, and you worked your way up through the ranks. And amazing to hear all of those things right there, and plenty of experience in the field. So let's talk a little bit about the position itself, and as it's a vacancy currently. So tell me about this process.
Yeah. So our judicial system is most people don't currently understand how the judicial spots are set up. So in our circuit is 9 counties. So I'm running in all 9 counties. Over those 9 counties, we have 19 judges total. 12 of them are elected and 7 are appointed as associates. So out of those 12, there are 9 resident circuit judges. They're elected in each of their counties, and there are 3 at-large positions. And so I'm running for one of the at-large, which gives me I drew the short straw, I guess you can say, and I get to run in all 9 counties. So I'm running for that. I'm currently serving as one of the 7 associate judges there. So in our circuit, we have still this pretty much the same authority in the courtroom as an elected circuit judge. We can handle all kinds of criminal cases, from traffic to murder, and anything on the civil side from small claims up to major civil cases.
Wow. Okay, so kind of the differences there between elected and appointed positions right there. That's very interesting. Now we're learning a little bit more about you and talking to us a little bit about your positions. It can get a little bit dicey there, and in terms of what you can and cannot talk about. So, what are some of the positions that you hold?
Well, it's running as a judge is a lot different than running as a legislator. When I go and speak to groups, oftentimes I'm with some of those legislators, and they can get up and they can say things like what kind of legislation they'll introduce or how they'll vote, things like that. I can't so much give those types of things. So I can't talk about what I'll do, but I can talk about things that I've done, for example. So people oftentimes, one of the big things in our circuit is what are your views, for example, on the Second Amendment? Well, I can't tell you what my views are on the Second Amendment. Otherwise, you'd be in my courtroom trying to get a ruling on that. But what I can say is things I've done in the past. So I'm currently an NRA certified basic pistol instructor. I'm an Illinois concealed carry instructor. So I tell people things like that. I can't tell people about my opinion on the Safety Act. But what I can tell them is when I was state's attorney, I was one of 100 state's attorneys that fought against the act. So that gives them a little bit of an idea into that. One of the things that's different from us is that we can't talk about what we've done or I'm sorry, what we'll do, but we can talk about judicial philosophy, for example. So a lot of people will say, well, are you a conservative, for example? You're a Republican, are you conservative? And I can't really say, well, here's how I'll rule on things, but I tell people that I'm a constitutional conservative. And in other words, that would be, a lot of people will call that an originalist view of the Constitution. So I take what the words say, and I say, well, that's what they must mean. So for example, if you kind of have 2 avenues of judicial philosophy, one might be a progressive view of the Constitution. And so just for example, let's take a look at the Second Amendment. So a progressive judicial philosophy might look at the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which talks about the right to keep and bear arms. And they may say, well, in a modern society today, do we really need all of those? Is there a public policy that says we shouldn't have those rights or those extent to rights? An originalist and a constitutional conservative will look at that and say, well, it says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it must mean what it says. So let's look and see what it says. Okay, well, the Supreme Court has held Well, it applies to individuals. It applies to keeping arms inside the house and bearing arms outside the house. So some different views and philosophies that we as judges can have.
Okay. Yeah. And again, thank you for breaking those down for us and those philosophies that you speak of. And you're not able to give us the positions, but you're able to tell us what you've done. And the voters are able to extrapolate from that. That makes a lot of sense there. So talk to me a little bit more about the Fourth Judicial Circuit there. And this seems like the next step for you. Do you kind of see that?
Yeah. So I was tremendously blessed to receive the appointment a few years ago to the associate position. When I look at that, I think of that as earning the trust of the circuit judges, these elected circuit judges, and I considered it an honor and privilege to serve in that capacity, and I love what I do, and I just thought it was time for me to take my message to the voters themselves and try to earn the trust of the voters in that actual elected position.
Amazing. And that's one way, like the voters are only going to be able to know who you are is the things that you have done. And you've talked about some of the things you've done, but how can voters know the things that you've done?
Well, they can go back and look at some of the things on my resume. I try to get out to events and talk about that. You know, one of the things that makes it so difficult to run as a judicial candidate as opposed to legislative candidates is that we're relatively unknown. So if you'd leave here today and I'd walk around Taylorville, for example, and I'd go to house, the virtually everyone would be able to name who the governor is. The majority of them would probably be able to name their state rep or a state senator. Virtually no one can name one of their judges. So, but even with that, if you look at those three positions, out of all of those three, the judge is the only one of those three that every decision that we make, every decision has an impact on someone's life. So if we look at a state representative, for example, no disrespect to state representatives, I have a lot of them that are friends. They are one of 118 votes. If you look at a state senator, they're one of 59 votes. A judge, we are the only person that makes the decision to determine whether or not a child goes back to mom or dad or stays with DCFS. We're the one that in a court case, the decision that we make determines where a child goes, mom or dad, in a divorce. We're the only one that determines if a person goes to prison, and if so, how long. We determine whether or not a person gets to maintain their rights, collective rights, even Second Amendment rights, and those things. So we are the least known commodity, and there's reasons for that. But I don't want to say have the most authority, but we're the ones that have the greatest impact on people's lives on a day-to-day basis.
Without a doubt. And the way you lay that out right there makes it extremely clear. And you guys are real decision makers when it comes down to it. And it kind of is interesting to me that people that would know the judge in town, there's a reason that they would know that. Right. Most people would not know it, but it's interesting. What are your thoughts on that? You said probably for some good reasons there, but when you are running for a candidate and you're trying to get your positions out and you're trying to take that next step for yourself, I mean, you can't do too much promotion as a judge there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's several reasons. One is that we can't say what we'll do. Sure. Right. And there's no fame or glory in that. Right. And so when the voters come out, they want to know, what will you do? And because we can't say that, people don't pay close attention to us. The other thing is we don't have to run for election all the time. If you run for election as circuit judge, once you get elected, every 6 years, we just run for retention. We don't have an opponent. So we're not running every 2 years or 4 years like a representative or a senator would be running for. So we're not out there as much. And technically speaking, even though I consider it a pleasure to serve the residents, I'm not their representative. I don't carry their views, for example. Now, I like to think that I have a lot of the values that come from our circuit, but I have to follow the law and go where it leads me. I don't get to make decisions based on what I think or what I feel. And sometimes that may give an opinion, it may give a decision that I may not have liked, but it's one that the Constitution and the laws led me to. And so it's just much more difficult getting your name out there when you're sort of bound by those things.
Of course, when your guide is the Constitution and you're
Right.
not known for any of your biases on either the right or the left, which
Right.
is what the representatives and the senators are for right there. It's been very informative, and I'm really appreciating this so far. We're speaking with Judge Granke. He's a candidate for the circuit judge for the Fourth Judicial Circuit. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. We'll have more when we come back right here on WTIM, your information station.
Your information station, WTIM. Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLawes Yankee. Well, we're still holding gains here. Corn up half a dozen, soybeans up double figures. May corn up 6 3/4, 435.5. July up 6.5, 446.5. December up 5, 466. May soybeans up a dozen, 1160.25. July up 11.5, 1170.25. November up 9.5, 1151 3/4. May wheat, Chicago up 2.5, 533.5. KC up 15.25, 571.5. Livestock, April lean hogs up 12.5 cents, 85.12. And April live cattle down 2.5, 187.22. April feeders down 92, 254.95. Crude down 99 cents. The Dow up 167. RFD Radio Network.
This is Bill Wise with the latest Appetite for Pork report. Today I'm talking with Dr. David Newman, Senior Vice President of Market Growth at National Pork Board, about how your pork checkoff dollars are working to bring more U.S. pork to tables around the world. Dr. Newman, the pork checkoff has been working to expand markets here at home. What exactly does that mean for pork producers?
Right now, in this challenging market that we're in, our goal is driving demand both domestically and internationally. We're building one-on-one relationships with several different pieces of the marketing aspect of pork, retailers, food service operators, and we're also working a lot with C-stores. So making sure that we're playing in all the areas where consumers are shopping. Using checkoff funds to do that keeps pork top of mind with relevant consumers.
Thanks again, David, for talking with us today about how the pork checkoff is building a bigger appetite for U.S. pork. You can find out more information at porkcheckoff.org/radio.
Your farmer-owned Prairie Farms Dairy can quench that thirst with 100% pure Florida orange juice. No matter what time of day, for breakfast, a quick pick-me-up at lunch, or to top off any meal, Prairie Farms Dairy 100% pure Florida orange juice gives you and your family lots of vitamin C and tastes great too. It's available in handy 1-gallon jugs in your grocer's dairy case. 100% pure Florida orange juice from your farmer-owned dairy, Prairie Farms Dairy. Wishing you a blessed Easter season.
Hi, this is Carrie Ostwick, financial advisor with Edward Jones, located at 601 North Webster Street in Taylorville. To find out all the services we provide, click our icon on the obituaries page of TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
I'm Kim Bourne, CEO of Taylorville Memorial Hospital, and we're hiring experienced nurses to join our great team. Learn more by clicking on our icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to WTIM, your information station. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Before we continue with this great conversation, let's thank the sponsors that make it possible. People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better. At Landmark, we are speaking with Judge Grenke, Associate Circuit Judge, candidate for the at-large Circuit Judge for the 4th Judicial Circuit. And Judge Grenke, we appreciate you for being here again with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. So as we are going to continue this conversation, we're going to just speak on another factor here that we've been talking a lot about within the judicial circuits and the system here. And when we talk Safety Act, now we're not going to talk about your views on it because you're the judge. You're an unbiased character within it all. But how has that Safety Act changed what you do in court?
Yeah, it's changed tremendously. It's taken away a lot of the discretion that we as judges had before the Safety Act went into effect. If we thought somebody should be released without cash bond, we could do that. So we've always had the authority to do that, but we could also set cash bond really to match the nature of the offense and how dangerous the person was. Now that's sort of tied our hands. A lot of people will say that advocate for the law. They'll say, well, a judge can still put a dangerous person behind bars pending trial. That's not absolutely correct. So there has to be all kinds of hurdles that we get through in order for us to do that. So, for example, most of your drug offenses, your possession of drug offenses are non-detainable. So we could have the most dangerous person ever to come into my courtroom. And if they're only charged with a simple drug possession charge, I can't hold them regardless of how dangerous they are. It has to meet certain offenses. The state has to file a petition to detain. And then I have to get all kinds of other hurdles through other types of hurdles. So it's made it much more difficult to do that. And so what we're seeing is we come in we'll cut them back out loose, and then they'll go out and get arrested again, come back in, we'll cut them out loose. So it's, I can tell you that when people get cut loose on that, it's frustrating for us as judges. It's frustrating for the prosecutors. But we have to live with it. We just have to do it with one hand tied behind our back now.
It's very interesting to hear a judge speaking on this. We've talked to so many local law enforcement about this exactly, and it's interesting to hear the pressures that are applied to you and the discretion that has been taken away. And and it's just a little bit more clear of a picture there. Let's continue to learn more about Judge Granke here. As you've received a recommendation, talk to me about this.
Yeah, so I received a recommendation from the Illinois State Bar Association Judicial Advisory Poll. So that the ISBA sends out a survey, a poll to members in the legal community, other attorneys throughout the entire circuit, ask them to score and rate you on several elements and whether they think you meet the requirements of office. And I received a recommended rating based on my scores. So I'm the only person in the race that has received that rating from the Illinois State Bar Association poll.
That's a big deal right there. And what do you think that'll say to voters?
Well, hopefully I've built my entire legal career on my reputation. I have that recommended status. I have an unblemished law license. Those are things that my opponent can't say. And so I hopefully that will, the voters will take the opinions of members in the legal community and support me for that.
And on the heels of the recommendation conversation, an endorsement as well.
Yeah, I've received several endorsements. One of my first big endorsements was the endorsement of all 9 county sheriffs in a circuit. So the county and the sheriff of every county in the circuit has endorsed me. Just recently received the endorsement of the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP. So I have the support now of the leadership, if you will, the sheriffs, and also the rank and file law enforcement. So extremely proud to have those endorsements.
Absolutely, another amazing factor right there. And why is it important for the communities to be paying attention to these judicial races? Because it's not something you're hearing about in commercials.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, people have been paying more and more attention to the judicial races. And that's because a lot of our rights right now are being litigated in courtrooms. So most people would have never thought many of these rights would have been litigated, but our First Amendment is being litigated in courtrooms. Our Second Amendment, which is the right to keep and bear arms, is being litigated. Our Fourth Amendment against unlawful or unreasonable searches and seizures are being litigated in courts. And I think there's some reason for that. And I have an opinion as to why I think those are being litigated. And I think many of the legislators in Springfield, and I'm not calling out anybody in particular, but I think many of them have a fundamental misunderstanding of the Constitution. So many people will tell you that our rights are derived from the Constitution, and that's not correct. The Constitution was a framework that restricts government interference on our God-given rights. So if you think that our rights come from the Constitution, then it would naturally stem that our rights come from the laws that they pass. And so when they pass these laws that infringe on those rights, they're being litigated because people are saying, wait a second, you didn't give us these rights. You can't take them away. These are God-given rights. And so many of them are being litigated in courts. And so it's very important for people to pay attention to their judges when they're voting to make sure that their judges subscribe to that.
And you mentioned earlier, again, you laid it out perfectly with the Constitution, and you that is your guide, Constitution. You said you're a constitutional realist, or it was constitutional?
A constitutional conservative.
Okay,
yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense right there. And we're in our last minute already, Judge Granke, so this one flew by on us, very informative here. Last minute words to say to any listeners out there.
Well, it's like I said, we're the least known commodity. I urge voters, do your research before you go to the polls. I think once you do your research, the choice will become clear. And I would humbly ask for your support here on March 19th or before. Early voting is open now.
Sure. Judge Granke, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. That was Judge Granke, Associate Circuit Judge and a candidate for at-large Circuit Judge for the 4th Judicial Circuit. A great conversation that was. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. I'd like to thank the sponsors that make these shows possible. People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better at Landmark. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Thank you all for listening.
Your information station, WTIM.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville, 96.1 W241 CF Taylorville, 107.5 W298 CD Shelbyville, 107.9 W300 EH Payne and Nicole.